It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, we'll have the latest from the Middle East, with the region on the brink of an all-out war.
I'm Mark Austin, live from Beirut, as the UN condemns Iran's missile attack on Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu meets with his security chiefs as he vows to retaliate. Ground fighting continues here inside Lebanon, with the Israeli military saying 8 of their soldiers have been killed. And we'll hear from some of the Brits who have boarded a chartered flight out of Beirut back to the United Kingdom. We're expecting that to land shortly.
Also coming up this hour on the UK Tonight, a manhunt continues for a suspect who allegedly threw acid over a schoolgirl in West London. The 14-year-old's father says that she is in shock. Plus, one of the UK's most wanted men is jailed over a plan to smuggle £100 million worth of cocaine into Scotland in boxes of bananas. And the round-the-world cruise that's been stuck in Belfast for 4 months now, it could finally be setting sail. We'll catch up with some of those on board. All that to come, much more on the UK Tonight.
Good evening then from Beirut. This is a region on the brink of an all-out war tonight after Iran's missile attack on Israel just over 24 hours ago. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to retaliate, saying Tehran will pay. Israel's ground offensive has continued today here inside Lebanon. The IDF says 8 of their soldiers have been killed in fighting with Hezbollah. Meanwhile, the United Nations has condemned Iran's actions, with the US describing last night's events as a significant escalation. Our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, has been to a school south of Tel Aviv that was hit by at least one Iranian ballistic missile. The building is not far from an Israeli airbase.
We're in the town of Gadara, which is just south of Tel Aviv, and this was a school that took a direct hit from at least one of the Iranian ballistic missiles last night. You can see how it's blown open a massive hole in the ground in the first floor classrooms. There's a lot of signs of shrapnel as well on the sides and the walls. All morning, people have been here cleaning it up. The headmistress is here as well, inspecting the damage to her school. And if we go inside, just whilst it's clear out here, you can see all the glass on the floor. They've been taking out these massive panes of windows. This school, I should say, is kind of in a campus area of its own, but it's surrounded by apartment blocks. And so the fact that the missile landed in the school when nobody was here meant that there were no casualties. There was a dance class going on, an after-school dance class, but they heard the sirens and they left, and they went to their homes and into their safe rooms. But I mean, it is extraordinary that the missile didn't hit, the missiles didn't hit any of the apartment blocks closer by. Now, there is also an Israeli airbase just on the outskirts of town. And if you look at social media, there's quite a lot of videos that suggest it took a direct strike, direct hit. It could be that the Iranian missiles had been aimed at that airbase, but they missed and they hit the school. We're up on the first floor now, and you can see the clearing up work that's going on. They've been here for a number of hours, but it was a complete mess when we first got here. It's going to take a lot to restore it again. It's just going into the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, so schools are out now anyway. 181 ballistic missiles fired by Iran at Israel yesterday. The Iranians claim that 90% of them hit their targets. Now, we don't know whether or not that claim is credible and to be believed. The Americans are saying the reverse. They were saying it was a failed attack and most of the missiles were shot down. I mean, by this evidence, some of the missiles did hit, and this is not the only location across Israel where there are reports and images of direct strikes. So Iran, whether or not it had a 90% success rate or not, clearly did get some of its missiles in, and they hit areas, certainly civilian areas, but we're hearing reports of military bases hit as well.
Alistair Bunkle there. Well, our international correspondent, John Sparks, has been taken to the Hezbollah-controlled area of Dahia here in Beirut by Hezbollah security to see the site of a missile strike firsthand.
We are on the front line in this conflict in Dahia, the Hezbollah-controlled area in South Beirut, and we have been brought by the Hezbollah security team to this site. It's a building, an office block that was brought down 2 days ago. You may be able to see the rubble is still smoking. It housed a television station, a religious television station. It's now been decorated with portraits of Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, who was assassinated by the Israelis. They have brought along a very considerable contingent of journalists, 150 people here, and I think inevitably this offers members of Hezbollah some protection. The Israelis are unlikely to hit this area while journalists are here. That's our assumption. We don't have much time here. I can tell you that the Israelis have been hitting this area. Been a series of airstrikes overnight, 12 reported in Beirut. So it is an active combat area. The Israelis giving warnings in some cases. They say that Hezbollah is manufacturing weapons underneath residential buildings. But that's not the message that Hezbollah are trying to get across here. They say the Israelis are hitting residential areas. This was a densely populated part of the city. More than 1 million people lived in this district. That's what they're trying to get across. And as you can see, the damage here is significant. It is considerable.
Well, the United Nations Security Council has been meeting to discuss the real crisis here in the Middle East. Earlier, we have heard from Iran's ambassador and permanent representative to the UN, Amir Saeed Iravani.
Our invocation of the right of self-defense followed by an extended period of restraint reflects Iran's responsible approach to regional and international peace and security at a time when the illegal action and genocide carried out by this occupying apartheid regime against the Palestinian people, as well as its repeated military aggression against Lebanon and Syria, continue.
Well, there were familiar words of condemnation of Iran from Israel's permanent representative to the UN, Danny Danon.
Israel will defend itself. We will act. And let me assure you, the consequences Iran will face for their actions will be far greater than they could ever have imagined. Let me ask the Council and the entire world, how would any of you react if faced with such an attack? What would any nation do if hundreds of ballistic missiles were raining down on your civilians, your cities, your places of worship? The scale of this attack is unimaginable, and yet Iran is determined to escalate further. This is not just a threat to Israel, this is a threat to the entire world.
Let's join our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who is in Washington. And Mark, it really does seem as if the diplomacy is being drowned out by the drums of war.
Yeah, certainly. It feels like we're in a very serious situation right now, with both sides threatening to escalate. It is the Israelis' turn, so to speak, in that it was last night that the attack came from Iran. Israel said before that attack that if Iran attacked, then it would strike back. And Iran has since said that if that happens, well, then they will strike back with ferocious force, they claim. And speaking to Iranian diplomats here in the United States at the UN in New York, they are repeating that threat. So into this comes American diplomacy, but what is that worth? That's the question that has been a question over the course of the past year since those Hamas attacks on October the 7th, almost exactly a year ago. The Americans have tried to do what they can in terms of pushing ceasefires, calling for restraint on both sides, specifically trying to leverage the Israelis and calling for them not to escalate the situation to a point at which point of no return, effectively. And today, President Biden was asked whether or not he would sanction or agree with an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear sites, which is certainly a distinct possibility. Here's what he said.
Would you support an attack on Iran's nuclear sites by Israel?
The answer is no. And I think there's things we'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do, but all 7 of us agree that they have a right to respond, but they should respond in proportion.
When he says all 7, he's referring to the G7 group of nations, Western nations, and including Japan, who are about to release a statement, a joint communique, effectively. He says there that the response should be proportional. Against that, beyond the fact that America has proven over the course of the past year its inability to exert particular leverage on its ally Israel, beyond that, it is clear too, with the military successes that Israel has had over the course of the past few weeks, with successful assassinations and also, of course, those pager attacks, that Benjamin Netanyahu may feel emboldened. He may feel that he is able that he's on a roll and that he can push forward. Remember too, Mark, that for many, many years now, and Benjamin Netanyahu has been prime minister on and off for so long, he has always said that it is so often left up to the Israelis to deal with what they believe to be the threat from Iran, the malign influence that Iran has right across the region, threatening Israel, trying to build a nuclear weapon. So often the West comes up with other alternatives like sanctioning Iran. And again today, President Biden said that the G7 would put in place more sanctions. But beyond that, it is only Israel that takes things further to actually, as they would see it, address the problem, taking out nuclear scientists and all the rest of it. So it may well be the case now that Netanyahu feels this is the moment for Israel to act alone and to strike back. I should say briefly, it's Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year now. That comes to an end at sundown on Friday. Perhaps that will be a period where they will not strike back. But after that, we'll see.
OK, Mark, thank you very much indeed. Well, hundreds of thousands in Lebanon have already fled their homes. Today, British citizens scrambled to get to Beirut's airport in the hope of getting on a UK chartered flight to safety. We spoke to some of them as they set off on their journey.
It's very surreal, so I think probably when I'll leave, then it will kick in a bit more. But at the moment being here, it's just been like everything's been quite a blur. I've been ringing, like, am I getting on? I don't know what's happening. And they just kept saying, wait for an email. And then luckily got the email this morning. And then I was like, right, got to get to the airport.
I mean, I live near the American University, so it's one of the safest places. But at the moment, there are no safe places, you know. And she's always on the watching the news, so she worries. I mean, I can understand that because I was in her place in 1982. My parents were here when Israel invaded, and I was in London.
I mean, the flights were hard to get, some of them, but I got this one, managed to get it, you know.
Tell me more about that. Why was it hard to get the flight?
I mean, we used to go on flights to check them, but they're just unavailable flights and all that stuff. It is a bit hard to leave my friends and our family and all that stuff, but it's okay. I'll come back.
So difficult days here in Beirut, and they will continue to be so. That's all from the Lebanese capital for now. Let's cross back to Sarah-Jane for the UK tonight.
Thank you very much, Mark. We'll see Mark Austin later on in the evening here on Sky News. But first, a manhunt is continuing here in the UK for the suspect of an apparent acid attack outside a school in West London. A 14-year-old girl was left with what has been described as potentially life-changing injuries, while 2 other people were also injured in that attack. What we know is that the suspect reportedly fled the scene in Westbourne Park on an e-scooter on Monday afternoon. We have little other details. Let's bring in Sky's Alice Porter, who joins me now from the school where the attack took place. And Alice, we haven't really known much over the past few days, but what we do know is that this manhunt is underway.
Yes, that's right. It's 2 days on from the suspected acid attack and no arrests have yet been made. What we are starting to hear is a little bit more from the father of one of the victims, Corey McFarlane, who is the father of the 14-year-old girl who sustained a number of injuries from the suspected acid attack. Now, she's currently in hospital, what is believed to be with life-changing injuries. Now, her father has spoken out saying she is traumatised by what has happened to her and she's worried that she may well be scarred for life. Now, he has set up a GoFundMe page and he's trying to get about £9,000 in donations to go towards her recovery, her rehabilitation, both psychological and physical. And he's anticipating this being very much a long road ahead of him. And it was very much here where I'm standing right now, where the 14-year-old girl in question should come out of Westminster Academy, her school, and she'd come out and was speaking to a 16-year-old boy who wasn't at the school. And it was then that an individual on an e-scooter, an individual who we don't believe had any relationship to the two teenagers, this man came by on an e-scooter and threw a substance which was believed to be acidic on the two teenagers. Now, we've heard that a teacher came out of the school and tried to support the two teenagers, but unfortunately also suffered injuries herself. She has been discharged from hospital, but the two teenagers remain in hospital, and the police are urging anyone with information to come forward. This happened at about 4:30 on Monday, a busy time. This is a busy road, and police are asking anyone with dashcam footage to come forward so they could try and find out who was responsible for this horrific attack.
Alice, thank you. Alice Porter with the latest there from West London. A surgeon who operated on children at Great Ormond Street Hospital has been accused of causing unnecessary pain. A report into Dr Yasser Jabbar will be handed to families this week as the hospital carries out a review into hundreds of children seen by him. Sky News has spoken to the parents of one child whose leg was amputated after undergoing multiple painful and unsuccessful procedures. Sky's Ashna Hurnag has this story.
Hi, I'm Bunty. I'm Esther's sister and I have a prosthetic leg.
Bunty's rare bone condition means she's been in and out of hospital all her life. Before getting her prosthetic leg, she endured multiple painful and unsuccessful procedures over 15 months to try and regrow a bone. Her doctor was Yasser Jabbar, a former consultant orthopaedic surgeon at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Her family says he sold them a dream.
He was all smiles and success, and I've lengthened her leg, it's great, it's longer than the other one for growth and this, and that was all a big major success. And then out of the blue, it's like, no, it hasn't worked. He was trying to save a leg that couldn't be saved. He took it upon himself to be the almighty saviour of the leg, as it were, and it proves that they were all unnecessary because they all failed. Not one operation was of any benefit to Bunty whatsoever.
Bunty's leg was eventually amputated in 2022. Dean believes she could have been spared a lot of pain.
She gets the swimming pool, won't take the leg off because she's been forced to carry this stigma that's been left by him.
Dr Jabbar no longer works at the hospital, nor has a licence to practice medicine in the UK. Following a review by the Trust of hundreds of his cases, Bunty's family have been told she was one of the patients who came to harm. Families affected are this week being asked if they want to see the findings of a damning report into the surgeon's practices and the wider department. They've been told it will be partially redacted, but may show Bunty was not alone.
So this case has similarities to the other cases that we have seen, which is a pattern of poor decision-making, failure to consider alternatives to the surgery, and failure to discuss with parents the risks and benefits to different treatment options and to whether any particular treatment was really in the patient's best interests.
Great Ormond Street Hospital have apologised to the family. We are deeply sorry, they say, to Bunty and her family, and all the families impacted by the review of care given by a lower limb orthopaedic surgeon. This is not what they should expect from any service at our hospital. We are now ensuring that all the findings are addressed at pace. We are committed to being open and transparent with our families when care falls below the high standards we strive for. High standards which Dean believes weren't upheld. His daughter's pain, he says, was completely avoidable.
Well, Ashna is with me now in the studio, and the suffering for those children and their parents has continued long after the treatment has finished. And this report comes out this week. Do we know what's going to be in it?
We've seen snippets of this Royal College of Surgeons report that is being offered to the families. Those that want it will receive it in any format that they'd like to see it in. We do know that it is going to be redacted in parts, and parts of the information that's been taken out, there'll be a short explanation explaining why those specific details have been removed. We know that it will include things like who knew what when. It'll be an assessment of practices, not only surrounding Dr. Jabbar, but also the wider orthopaedic department at Great Ormond Street. In snippets that I have seen, it describes the department at the time as being dysfunctional. It describes some of the lower limb reconstruction as not being safe. Now, following that report, some 721 cases are being reviewed of people who came under Dr. Jabbar's case. The last update I had from Great Ormond Street on the number of cases they've gotten through so far was on the 13th of September. By that point, they'd done 42 cases, and they had found that 22 children had come to some degree of harm, including, as you saw in that piece there, Bunty. Bunty was told, and her family were told, that she suffered moderate physical harm and mild psychological harm. That assessment, though, her father believes is too low. He says, look, I was with her during all of those procedures, all of those, in those days and those weeks of recovery. From what he saw, it was much worse than that. And of course, she is missing 8 inches of her leg, given that the lower limb has been amputated. There are now calls, though, from solicitors representing these families that other hospitals that Dr. Jabbar worked at prior to GOSH should also conduct independent reviews, namely one being Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. They have responded to us in the past couple of weeks that we've been pursuing this investigation. They have said, we recognise that our patients and their families may have concerns about this doctor. We are taking appropriate action to address these concerns.
OK, Ashna, thank you. Ashna Huranag with the latest on that story. Thank you. Now, Downing Street has said today that Sir Keir Starmer has paid back more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality, including tickets to a Taylor Swift concert, the value thereof. Well, earlier, the Prime Minister was asked why he paid back the donations. Here's what he had to say.
On the repayment, I can't say any more than I did. We're going to drop some principles until they're in, which will guide everybody. Until they're in place, I thought it was right to repay these particular payments. That's the long and the short of it.
Let's get more on this with our political correspondent, Serena Barker-Singh. It's perhaps no surprise the Prime Minister felt he had to do this because he was under significant pressure.
Yes, indeed. And he's sort of closed one chapter but then opened another. He's saying that he's going to look into rules, overhauling the hospitality rules for ministers to ensure better transparency. But then, as you say, paid back this £6,000 worth of tickets, Taylor Swift tickets, things he's accepted from the Football Association, Doncaster Racing, and also some clothes from his wife. So he's slightly admitting there that perhaps some of those won't be fulfilled under his new criteria. He's going to change the ministerial code to make some donations more transparent, while not sort of addressing the ones that he's previously accepted. Now, he has said he's not going to accept any more clothing going forward, so perhaps that is a red line. But then awkward timing today, as the donor who's in the centre of this donations route, Lord Ali, he is the biggest personal donor to the Starmers, giving them glasses, clothes and other things. He is now come under investigation by the Parliamentary Commissioner for what they say alleged non-registration of interest. Now, this could be a very simple administrative error. Labour seem to think so. They've said it's dull and clerical, and they're quietly confident this investigation will conclude pretty quickly. But it is awkward timing and a reminder of just how weak this is an area for the Labour Party. And now we really don't know when the issue of donations and when this issue will finally be done and dusted.
Serena, thank you. Still to come on the UK tonight, the trial of the police officer accused of fatally shooting 24-year-old Chris Cabba in South London has got underway. And how a notorious crime boss in Scotland, known as Iceman, is brought down by a box of bananas. And could the much-delayed round-the-world cruise from Belfast finally be about to set sail? We'll catch up with some of those on board.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
More flares going off, a volley of rocks, cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. We have now left Italy and entered France. Nobody's asked to check our identity. Made by people who dare to challenge.
Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why?
Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
It's devastating, actually.
It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
The failures of October the 7th are the failures of Benjamin Netanyahu.
He was in complete shock. Everything he believed about Hamas turned out to be wrong.
They are bent on Israel's destruction.
I think he's the greatest statesman we've had.
He's not a diplomat, he's a populist politician.
They keep telling us that they want aid. And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty? I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
A court has heard today a Metropolitan Police officer may have been angry, frustrated and annoyed when he fatally shot Chris Cabba. Martin Blake is on trial at the Old Bailey over the death of the 24-year-old. He was shot through the windscreen of his car in South London in 2022. Mr Blake has denied murdering Chris Cabba. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt reports.
At the heart of the case, said the prosecutor, was the decision-making of one man, the police officer who fired his weapon. He shot dead Chris Cabba by firing one bullet into his head, jurors were told. The officer intended to incapacitate and kill him. The man in the dock is Martin Blake, an authorised Metropolitan Police firearms officer. He's 40 years old. The one charge, murder. Prosecutor Tom Little KC said, for a firearms officer to shoot and kill, it should, understandably, be a remedy of last resort. The body-worn footage and footage from cameras on police vehicles reveals that it was not necessary to shoot. The court heard that Mr Cabba tried to drive his Audi forwards to escape, but failed. He had just reversed into a police car, blocking his way, when the officer shot him. At the time, he had his hands on the car's steering wheel. The defendant did not know the man he shot, said the prosecutor. What he was thinking at the time, only he knows. But you may want to consider in this case whether the requests made to Chris Cabba by the police that had not been obeyed by him caused the defendant to become angry, frustrated and annoyed. The prosecutor said that on careful analysis, nothing that Chris Cabba did in the seconds before he was shot justified the officer's decision to shoot. Chris Cabba's parents and supporters were in court for the opening of the prosecution case. Mr. Cabba was 24 when he died. That night, said the prosecutor, Mr. Cabba was driving an Audi whose number plate had been reported to police the night before, after reports of gunshots in nearby Brixton. The trial resumes in the morning and is expected to last for 3 weeks. Martin Brunt, Sky News at the Old Bailey.
One of the UK's most wanted men has been jailed for 20 years after masterminding a plot to smuggle nearly a tonne of cocaine from South America into Scotland, hidden in boxes of bananas. Jamie Stevenson, known as Iceman, pleaded guilty to directing the importation of the drug, which was seized at Dover in September 2020. Well, it is quite the story. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillies has been following it for us today. Conor, tell us more.
Yeah, Sarah-Jane, this is a fascinating case. One of the UK's most notorious, most dangerous gangsters, a man who sat on the UK's most wanted list for a number of years. Ultimately, his demise came through a crate of fruit. This is a man, the cocaine kingpin, as he has been dubbed, Jamie Stevenson, who ran a worldwide multi-million-pound drug cartel. And this story centres around a shipment that came in from South America. A tonne of cocaine was hidden in boxes of bananas that were imported. Authorities across the UK estimate they could have been worth anywhere between 80 and 100 million pounds. They were intended for the streets of Glasgow, for the streets of Scotland, where they would flood those communities and clearly cause mass devastation and clearly take many lives as well. But ultimately, this all came crashing down back in 2020 during the pandemic, when that cargo was infiltrated at the port of Dover by the border force, and they discovered within those banana boxes 119 blocks of cocaine with a purity of almost 80%. Now, clearly that triggered a massive European-wide, worldwide fact-finding expedition from law enforcement agencies, and they managed to infiltrate a messaging service, an encrypted messaging services that's Jamie Stevenson, known as the Iceman, and his accomplices had been exchanging messages on, where they were essentially boasting that they were in line to make lots and lots of cash as a result of this. Stevenson was initially tracked down and arrested while he was out jogging in the Netherlands, and ultimately that has led to this case coming to court and this sentence today, where he was handed 2 decades in jail, a big victory according to the National Crime Agency. Let's have a listen.
Jamie Stevenson, who was directing the people within the group, was sitting at the top table of organised crime and had contacts all around the world, from South America and across Europe. And they had little disregard for the safety of the people of Scotland, or indeed elsewhere within the United Kingdom. So the role of the National Crime Agency was to disrupt this crime group as near as they can to the upstream supply chain. And we did that through our network of contacts, both with international law enforcement partners and across Europe.
Here we go. Now, he was known as Scotland's version of Tony Soprano. He was also convicted after pleading guilty to running a street Valium pill factory with the ability to churn out 250,000 tablets an hour. A major operation. 5 other accomplices, they were jailed today as well. Clearly, as I mentioned, law enforcement agencies saying this is a big victory on the war on drugs, because let's remember, here in Scotland, it is still the epicentre of Europe's drugs death crisis.
Indeed. Conor, thank you. Conor Gillies there with the latest. Still to come here on the programme. how a man turned away from a restaurant is using his experience to fight the stigma around facial difference. We'll speak to him after the break. Now, my next guest tonight wants to raise awareness of facial difference. This was after he was apparently asked to leave a restaurant in London because staff told him he was scaring the customers. Oliver Bromley has neurofibromatosis type 1, or NF1 for short, which causes tumours to grow in the nervous system and skin. And Oliver is with me now. Oliver, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Sarah-Jane, for having me.
I heard about your story and I really wanted you to come in to see us, because what happened to you will be happening to so many people with facial differences, and it's really important to talk about it, to educate people and raise awareness. First of all, let's go back to the start. You were receiving treatment in London for your condition.
Yes, on the occasion of the incident, I was an inpatient at the fantastic King's College Hospital. I had been there for a course of a few weeks. And on this particular occasion, I thought, well, I'm going to try something different. I was tired of hospital food. So I walked a distance to this particular restaurant. I looked through the window. It said cash only. I went to draw some money. They had seen me browsing, and when I went to place the order on the second occasion, they said, "You're scaring the customers, please leave."
How did you feel in that moment?
I was absolutely gutted. I've always had stares. I've always had people curiously glance at me, but I'd never been as directly discriminated against as I was on that occasion. So I was very hurt. I was very upset. I went to a nearby park and I phoned my wife, I phoned my mom. They consoled me, and we worked on a plan of how to move forward.
Because it would have been so easy to take that away, be hurt by it, and just carry on. But you wanted to raise this as an issue, not just to raise awareness, but also to take it to the police, because this is a hate crime.
It is a hate crime.
You didn't know about at the time.
I didn't know about that. Under the Equality Act of 2010 and the contravention of that act, it is classified as a hate crime. So I thought about it, and I think this is the way God's made me. I don't believe it should be about me. I don't want the message to be lost. And I feel we need to create an awareness around facial differences. What is neurofibromatosis? Perhaps educate the hospitality industry to help prevent this from occurring again.
What is NF1?
So NF1 is a genetic illness. It occurs congenitally. It can occur spontaneously. It's characterized by very small subcutaneous tumors that grow over the nerve endings. So a lot of people have bumps under the skin. Some of the larger plexiform fibromas, as they are called, cause facial disfigurement. So it presents differently in different people.
Yeah. And it's a genetic condition.
It is
and
a genetic.
started to develop when you were in your teens?
So typically the onset is at puberty.
Yeah.
It's present at birth. And sometimes you can identify little children with what they call café au lait spots. So it's little brown spots under the skin. But the actual onset occurs at or around the age of 14, 15.
And when you say, as you're going about your day-to-day business, living your life,
yes.
People may have curious stares. It's just the way people are, isn't it?
Yes.
And I'm sure children will ask questions and talk to you as well. What does you want people to know? Because, you know, this doesn't just affect you, it affects your family, your lovely wife, Bridget, who came in here with you tonight. It affects them as well. And it's about education. It's just about sensitivity as well, right?
And when we know better, we do better. So I can understand why some people, particularly those in the restaurant industry, might think that it's contagious, but it's not. And working with two fantastic charities, Nerve Tumours UK and Changing Faces, we need to create awareness and use this platform, these platforms to do so.
What was the response of the Metropolitan Police?
So the Metropolitan Police were horrified. They came to my hospital room and interviewed me actually on the day of one of my surgeries. They were absolutely disgusted and horrified, outraged. They have reached out to this particular restaurant. They said there's not much they can do. However, that establishment is now on their radar. So if a similar incident were to occur, they would take it further.
And also you're alerting people to the fact that if they experience this, there is something they can do about it.
There absolutely is, and I didn't know that I could even approach them. So I'm very relieved to hear that hate crime, specifically disability hate crime, is quite a big thing, and there are mechanisms in place to address it.
Have you been in touch with the restaurant yourself?
I reached out to them initially. I gave them a week. I gave them the right of reply. They chose not to reach out to me, which is why, with the assistance of the Citizens Advice Bureau, I followed their protocols and I took it further.
And again, it would have been so easy for you to take to social media to name and shame the restaurant, as many people do.
Yes.
But you didn't want to do that.
I didn't want to. Just a bit of context. I am from South Africa originally. I understand the racial nuances, the racial differences. At the time of the incident, this country was just in the midst of such horrific racial hate crimes. So I didn't want to inflame the situation further. And again, I feel that if I had done that, the message would have been lost, and it's not about me. It's a bigger story.
Yeah, you didn't want any repercussions
Absolutely.
for them other than through official channels.
And you know, there are one or two individuals that caused this, but there are other people in that restaurant that would have been affected by it unfairly. So we chose not to seek retribution.
Yeah. How are you feeling about it now? Because a bit of time has passed, and as you said,
it's been absolutely amazing. I've had such amazing outpouring of support from all over the world. I couldn't imagine this happening. So it's been wonderful that I know that we've turned this around for good, and we can create awareness around NF1.
Well, look, Oliver, thank you for coming in to see us.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's often when something so horrible happens to someone that something good can come out of it.
Absolutely, and I just say to people, just be kind.
Yeah.
Just be kind, please, because you have no idea what somebody is living with.
Yeah, and do you know what? On a news day like today, and as we've had over the last few weeks and months, you know, that is a really strong message for all walks of life and all situations. So look, Oliver, really good to meet you.
Thank
good
you.
luck for the future and continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Sarah-Jane.
You'll be helping so many other people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, still to come on the programme tonight, we're going to catch up with some of those on board the much-delayed Belfast cruise ship that could finally be about to set sail. And in the sport, we'll discuss Erik ten Hag's future at Manchester United.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent. I've reported from around the world and around the UK.
I'm Mark Stone, I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, DC. And beyond the United States, from across the world, I report on the biggest stories.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I remember some of the worst of the violence here.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, we're going to catch up with the strangers who waited so long for their cruise to set sail from Belfast that they ended up getting engaged. We'll be revisiting their story because we think the cruise ship is finally going to leave Belfast after 4 months to go around the world. But first, Teddy is here with sport. He's not going anywhere, he's staying right here with me. But somebody who could be going somewhere, or maybe not, we don't know, Erik ten Hag. He's been talking to Sky Sports News today. And what's he had to say? Because it was all a bit up in the air at the weekend, wasn't it, for him?
It's been up in the air a little bit with his tenure there for 2 and a bit years, and also the 11+ years since Sir Alex Ferguson left. It always seems a manager is a few bad results away from question marks. But humbling at home to Tottenham Hotspur at the weekend, had people questioning Erik ten Hag, 3rd defeat from 6 in the league already. But a really good interview, actually, with Juliet Farrington, published on the Sky Sports website. We're showing it on Sky Sports News. Quite an open from ten Hag, but he talks about that very public managerial review, how that established trust with the owners, even though some people felt that was disrespectful in the summer, didn't they, when they were courting other managers, potentially talking to them. But they stuck with ten Hag off the back of winning the FA Cup against Manchester City. We can hear a little clip of that interview now. He talked about spirit in the camp, as we say, trust and the process and everyone being united around it.
I'm not thinking about it. I'm not anxious as well. We are in here together. We made in the summer togetherness, the ownership, the leadership, this agreement, and we are all behind it. We knew also what was the strategy with young players in a transition.
Look, it's all well and good, isn't it, being open and relaxed, and it's all very well and good having a vote of confidence, but, you know, finishing 8th for a second year in a row, would that be good enough for Manchester United? I'm guessing probably not.
It's hard to conceive of a world where it would be, wouldn't it? 8th last season, worst in the Premier League era. They're currently 13th with a negative goal difference at the moment in the Premier League. The last time they finished 13th was under Sir Alex Ferguson in 1990, when back then there was a lot of question marks over his future, but there hadn't been £600 million spent in his tenure back in 1990. Expectation on Ten Hag to deliver. It's going to be very difficult, you'd imagine, to finish in the top four, given the champions City, Arsenal going well, Liverpool and Chelsea. But certainly you expect him to knock at 5th or 6th at least to do that. But he's got Porto away tomorrow night in the Europa League, which is a big one. Meanwhile, we've got a busy night in the Champions League. We'll update you in just a second on Villa and Liverpool.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Tea at the cricket. For many, it's as important as the action on the pitch. Egg and cress sandwiches, tea, scones and cake. But that's not the tradition everywhere.
So, here we go. It's chicken. Oh, it's chicken.
In the summer, the ECB launched their Taste of Cricket campaign, celebrating diversity at clubs around the country. This event in London even had a touch of glamour.
Roll up, roll up, roll up for Carl's jerk chicken.
You think about the diversity in cricket, all the countries that are involved with that. To just kind of say, what do you do for afternoon tea? What do you eat? Most people think of cucumber sandwiches or a bit of egg and cress. And then suddenly you come to the Shepherd's Bush cricket ground where we are today, and it's all about jerk chicken and wonderful Jamaican patties and stuff.
For cricket bosses, this is just one small step in rebuilding the damaged reputation of the game and making it open to everyone.
Cricket has had a lot of issues around discrimination, ethnicity, race, gender, and we were trying to find ways to bring communities together, create some more trust, not suggesting for a second that we put on some community events and then all of cricket's issues are resolved. But alongside all of the policy changes, I think it's really important that these community events that celebrate people, celebrate all of the different communities that exist within cricket.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Now, I want to bring you an update on a story we told you about last week. The Round the World cruise ship, which has been stranded in Belfast since May, could finally be about to set sail. This is after months of delays. The Villa Odyssey remains anchored just off the coast of Belfast at the moment. However, we are told if paperwork issues can be resolved, it may well set off tomorrow. Well, last week I spoke to 2 passengers who boarded the cruise ship as complete strangers and are now engaged after a whirlwind romance. Angela and Jan met back in May when the cruise was delayed, and now they're all set to marry on board the boat when it finally sets sail. I'm pleased to say that the happy couple rejoin us here on the UK Tonight, because as the place you got engaged, Belfast will always have a special place in your heart, so I'm sure you were planning to revisit it, but probably not quite this quickly.
Yeah, you're quite right, Sarah-Jane. We love this place. Apparently we can't leave as much as we'd like to, but the good news is you're correct. We are everything's been checked off, and we're setting sail tomorrow, heading towards France. So we're looking forward to a sea day where we can all just relax and get our sea legs.
Yeah, because we did think you were going a couple of days ago. In fact, everybody was recalled on board, weren't you? You went to your cabin, there was a big dinner, and then what happened?
Well, that was followed by a big party, so the rest has been a blur. No, honestly, I mean, we're in our cabins. We're getting 3 wonderful meals a day. There's entertainment the whole time. We're on a cruise. It's just not really going anywhere yet. But otherwise, it's exactly what we signed up for.
Yeah, it softened the blow to have a party, didn't it, when they broke the news to you that you wouldn't actually be setting sail just yet. What's the atmosphere like amongst the passengers? Because just to remind people, this cruise ship is setting sail for how long?
3.5 years per circumnavigation, but it's going to keep doing it for at least 15 years.
Exactly. So you've got to have patience. You're in no rush. You're in this for the long haul. But you do want to look out of your cabin window at some point and not see any land. So has there been a sense of frustration amongst some of the passengers, or have they all been as sort of positive as you guys are?
You know, I think most of us have a really great attitude. We are so happy to be back on board. We're happy to be around our friends and enjoy the ship life. So I believe the mass majority of the passengers on board and the residents are pretty happy just to be here.
Yeah, hang around any longer. There might be some other newly engaged couples. Because, Jan, I understand you were a part of a singles WhatsApp group on board the cruise ship, and people got word of your engagement because you exited the group. Any news on the singletons on board? Any more romance at the time you've been in Belfast?
Yeah, look, it was funny. This was completely unexpected for us, and it was funny on the singles group because I just said, I have to kindly bow out and put a little picture of a ring, and it kind of slipped out from there.
I like that. At least you sent a message. Most people just exit group. They don't even bother sending a message. Right, talk to me where you're going to be going when you finally set sail tomorrow, and how will you mark the occasion?
So we're off to France. We have stops in Spain and Portugal before we head to the Azores, and then over to Bermuda and down to Bahamas, and then we will start a nice long several-month adventure in the Caribbean.
Yeah. And you've got a chance to know your neighbours, haven't you? So you know who you're going to be setting sail with. Are you happy with your neighbours? Who's either side of you? Because you've got to spend the next 3.5 years next door to them.
Very, very much so. Very nice folks we've met from all over the world.
I don't think anybody's going over the side quite yet, but no, we've all become friends, and it's very interesting. We've kind of formed our little friends groups, but there's so much to do on the ship that sometimes you don't even see anybody for a day or two.
Yeah, and I would imagine, you've seen so much of each other in Belfast. Once the ship actually sets sail, because Belfast isn't actually that big. The cruise ship is probably bigger, so you'll probably be able to sort of lose people a little bit more on the cruise ship and not see them every day. And of course, it will be the start of your long and happy life together, your wedding on board and your honeymoon as well. Just a final thought before you set sail. Just give us a bit of an insight as to what is on board, because I understand it's got everything.
I'm sorry, we lost the last part of your question.
It's got a bit of everything on board. Just give us an insight into what there is on there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a full gym and spa. There's a library, a games room. We have 3 restaurants. We have, I think, 7 or 8 bars. There's nonstop entertainment, including live music and trivia games and all the kind of things you'd normally see on a cruise ship. Mm-hmm. But on a beautiful older lady. And on the deck we have pickleball, we have ping pong, and 2 pools up there. So we're pretty well sorted.
I'll tell you what, life's not going to be boring, is it, the start of your married life? Well, listen, fingers crossed you do set sail tomorrow. It's been a long time coming, but it sounds like it's going to be worth the wait. Angela and Jeanne there, newly engaged. Well, not so new anymore. You've been in Belfast so long, but newly engaged to us. Really good to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Now, a little bit of other news from today. The Princess of Wales has met a teenage photographer today with a rare and aggressive form of cancer after inviting her to Windsor Castle. These are some of the official photos that were released earlier today. The Princess of Wales, who has recently completed her own chemotherapy treatment, was seen hugging 16-year-old Liz at the event today in Windsor. In a personal message on social media, William and Kate described her as a talented young photographer whose creativity and strength inspired us both. Well, that's all from the UK tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night from 8. Up next, it is The World. More on the situation in the Middle East. Stay tuned.